See? All right. Hi, World Schoolers. I am back with another really fascinating and important interview here to support you in your world schooling experience. I'm talking to Katie, who has house swapped or house exchanged over 100 times. And that to me is amazing. And I'm sure this is a conversation with a house swapping expert that you don't want to miss. So I do want to give you a little warning. Katie's talking to us from the Dominican Republic, and we've had some problems with the internet freezing. So bear with us. We're going to do our best to make this conversation work. It's going to be a great one. If you're tuning in and you're watching this in replay, please do put in hashtag replay, and I will tag Katie in this thread. And so if there are any questions for her, she will be notified and she can go log in and answer your questions. So if you're watching this live now, give me a like so it'll alert other world schoolers that this is happening. And also, if you have questions for Katie about house swap or house exchange, you can start putting them into the chat. Katie, welcome, and give us a quick introduction as to who you are and what your world schooling journey has looked like so far.
Sounds good. Hi, everyone. I'm Katie Humphreys, currently live in the Dominican Republic. We started formally world schooling in 2019, right in time with the pandemic. But we managed to stay on the road and visit a number of places. And because we had always had world schooling in mind with the idea of home swapping being a part of it, we actually decided to purchase a second home base so that we could use that, make that work for us as we traveled the world. Because when we left our original home that we were swapping, we rented that out. So yeah, like many people do. So all of the different angles. So now we're using this property here in the Dominican Republic and still able to swap all over the world. Just got back from about 5 swaps over the summer months.
Oh, that's amazing. So you are originally from the US or Canada?
US. I'm originally from Oregon.
Okay, so the home in Oregon then is your rented property, and the one that you're at in Dominican Republic, which is, it seems like it's a popular place for world schoolers to come.
Yeah, and I was surprised even from the homeschooling angle, which is a little bit separate in terms of that population that reaches out to us. It's been very, very popular. Our other home was in Las Vegas, which you would assume would be,
Right.
international tourist site. Here, we're getting a lot of people that are looking for that cultural experience, whether or not they're formally calling it world schooling, maybe they're homeschoolers of some sort and are wanting to come here and have an experience out of the Dominican Republic.
Okay, so did you research beforehand to see which places were popular for world schoolers or no?
That's a great question. I hope we're still going. Perfect. Hopefully we're still going. Great question. And always one of the first questions I get when I talk about home exchange is, how do I know if my house or my area would be popular?
Right.
And there is, for me, and I believe most home exchangers, there isn't a popular, unpopular place. It's all about experiencing a new location through the quote unquote eyes of a local family living in a local environment. So I didn't look at all. I just knew from our experience, from all the swaps that we've had so far, that people are intrigued by places all over the world. And once you sort of put it out there, and there's the option to sort of advertise yourself, hey, I have this listing through different Facebook groups, and that can bring in a lot of the traffic that might not have been looking. We're in a small town. People wouldn't have had this on their radar necessarily. But then you put it out there and then they want to come, and then you give them the opportunities that are available nearby.
Okay, so have you prepared like some Airbnb hosts, like a book of things to do in the area and transportation and all the basics?
Absolutely. The crossover, I would say, with Airbnb, there's some crossover, not a lot though, because the real concept here is that this is a lived in home, and that when you are exchanging with someone, you're exchanging your whole environment. So that could mean clothes in the closet. It's certainly going to mean condiments in the fridge and or just a full cupboard. So what you do is then kind of write up what people's experience would be like in the house, in the neighborhood, and then what you do personally. You know, if someone's swapping with us that has kids the same age, then I'm going to share, here's the activities that we enjoy in our area with kids this particular age.
So how long have you owned this home in Dominican Republic, and how rooted are you in the community before you started home exchanging?
I started home exchanging this home on the day we moved in. So much experience with home exchanging out of our last property. And I knew that for us, travel is, we're able to do travel at the level that we do. And my kids are 10, 11, and almost 9, and they've been to about 40 countries. And that's really because when we go to a country, we're not paying for lodging, we're utilizing our property. And it's not always that somebody owns a property that they're swapping. Many times, you know, because this isn't a money transaction. So it's not usually against rules within tenancy agreements and those sort of things. So oftentimes just any property that you have, if you're renting a place, you would maybe want to get permission from your landlord and then put it out there and open it up for those sorts of opportunities. And you can either be someone who puts out a listing and then sort of generates interest based on that, or you can be someone who's seeking out particular locations. So you're writing to people and enticing them. Hey, I'd love to go to your area. Here's why you should consider coming to mine.
Okay, so before we get into some of the experiences and the typical like exchange, sort of protocol, I want to ask you something really important. And for me, the first thing that started our world schooling journey 14 years ago was really about readjusting my mindset. I had to believe the world was a safe place because here I was, single mom, traveling with my child, in Latin America, a place where I didn't speak the language at the time. I do now, but that if I didn't think that the world was a safe place, then my experiences would have been, from a place of fear and not feeling safe. What did you need to do in order to feel like this was safe for not only your property, but for your children and for the exchangers? How did you, sort of reprogram your mind that this is a safe activity to do?
I think it was a little bit of a cart before the horse situation, given that we started home exchanging back in 2013, and that was our primary form of travel. And before our kids were even school age, that's the way that we went about it, was when we were working full time in specific locations. Then we freed up about 3 months out of the year where we would seek out swaps or take advantage of exchange requests that came our way. And then we would go immerse within those local neighborhoods. And I think part of, in terms of safety, you're corresponding with a fellow couple, single person, or family who's obviously very comfortable in that space that they're going to exchange with. So it's really, you're in touch with the local person or the person living locally right from the get-go. And there's that comfort around, this is where I'm comfortable residing or raising my family or going to the park or staying out at night or arriving from the airport at 2 a.m. There's that comfort level that is sort of known because you're going into someone's space that they've already occupied and been successful with.
And what about the fear of like your house being trashed or your car getting crashed or, something like that?
Yep. Super common fear for folks who haven't sort of taken that plunge. And the thing with home swap, as opposed to Airbnb, which I'm not against in any way, is that I'm sharing mine and you're sharing yours with me. So we have this mutual respect agreement. And home swapping now has evolved to the point where you're not necessarily always doing what's called a reciprocal swap. Sometimes you're doing a swap where someone came to your place and then you received credit for that. So you're using your credit elsewhere. But the idea is that the community is people who are comfortable opening up their homes, having trust in one another. There's certainly, websites that foster the relationship, the communication, and even the feeling of comfort with maybe a deposit, or there's no monetary deposit, but the idea that you'd be covered under exchange agreements if something happened to your property. I always like to share that in over 100 swaps in 9+ years, we broke one wine glass, and I think someone broke one wine glass at our house in all of that time.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, it may not be my questions, but I'm sure these questions are questions that families who are not exposed to this might have. And I started couch surfing, hosting and surfing, which is similar in some senses, but different in another sense. Back in 2007. So like, it's something that you have to feel your way through. And I bet your children have benefited from this kind of exchange. Can you talk about maybe some of the benefits your children have received as through home swapping?
Sure. I think number one is adaptability. And we laugh to ourselves on a regular basis that they can make themselves comfortable immediately in just about any space. And we've been in spaces from being in Korea where we came in, there's no what we would consider traditional bed, right?
Right.
Going to be a mat on the floor in that situation. We've been all over to where it's just like, okay, this is the space that we're going to occupy for a short period or a long period. And immediately there's that comfort, and there's there's kids playing outside 2 houses down, or out in the hallway, and that immediate sort of introducing and just bonding and feeling, because you're feeling like a local. You're feeling like a local when you're in a local space.
I love that. And so is there a typical duration for house swapping? You go for a month? Do you go for a day? Probably not a day, but where does that fall?
Sure. I hate to speak for all home swappers, but I do have a good sort of feel for the community, and that it's ideal, I think, if someone's not asking for a 1, 2, 3 night sort of thing that feels like a hotel at that point, and that's not really the nature of the community. The idea is to share the space, and anywhere, I would say, typically from a week to a month. And then there's groups that we're a part of that are, hey, let's do long term, let's do 3 months, let's maybe do a year, let's walk in each other's shoes for a more significant period of time.
I love that.
But more than your just couple nights. Certainly there are those opportunities, and we have, we've probably done a minimum of 3 nights if you're passing through an area.
Yeah, makes sense. So what do you do in terms of things like, ongoing bills like utilities, lights, gas, that sort of thing that needs to be paid, or else obviously you won't have lights or gas?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the idea is that the homeowner or the person who has the property, if they're leasing it, whatever the situation, they are then just maintaining everything as if they were there.
Okay.
Very rarely, I would say, but there's countries like even the Dominican Republic where electricity, if an air conditioning unit was left on, that could be pretty significant. So on our end, it's just strongly mentioned that, and there's lots of reminders around the place of just turning off that sort of thing. But there are oftentimes questions posted in the Facebook group that say, if I did want to broach the subject of asking for a utility, what would that look like? And most people say, have it be between yourself and your fellow exchanger, and see what makes sense in that situation. But what we've always liked is we don't need to change bills in and out of names or anything like that, that it's just very, very consistent. I'm using your electricity, you're using mine.
Right. Makes sense. Although in some places, especially like Europe right now, facing like a major energy crisis, might be a little different.
We did a month in England, and we had that knowledge that was on the news. And so we were extra conscientious about it. And we, made sure not to turn on the oven during that time. We just got around it. So, but again, it's because I want to respect that family was in our house previously, because you can do an exchange where it's not at the exact same time. It can be non-simultaneous.
Right.
And of course, they took wonderful care. And so we had that in our hearts that we wanted to, be as gracious as possible in their space.
Do you ever meet the families you exchange with in person?
Yeah. So for that family, so you had brought this up earlier, and it's a great thing to bring up because most people don't realize you can also swap vehicles. That's common as well, but it really depends on the country. It's harder to do in, say, England because their insurance situation is different than, say, Dominican Republic, where your car is insured, not your person. So here it's very easy. So when we met this British family at the airport, we were going to get on a flight to Colombia at the time, and they got in our car and came to our home. So they used our car and then had their time here. And in the way we worked that out is we stayed a bit longer at their place, not using their vehicle.
Got it.
Yeah, we've definitely done where we're exchanging keys at an airport. We had a trip to Austin once where literally they got off the flight that we were getting on. So
oh my gosh.
But then there's meetups. We've also done where, let's say, a lot of times I would say younger couples will do a situation. I'm going to Madrid on exchange on Friday, and the gentleman is going to go in with his partner. So he'll be in town, probably within a mile or something. And then oftentimes they'll say, if you want to, I'd love to show you a local spot if you'd like. So there's that opportunity. Very, very friendly community.
I really love that. I just want to break for a second and say hi to Tanya, Sarah, Eva, Inyoung, Charles, Chanel, Annie, and Michelle also. If you guys have any questions oh my God. Oh my God, I can't believe I just blanked on your name. Katie. Forgive me. If you have any questions for Katie, please put them into the chat. I'm turning the color of my wall. I'm so sorry. Mine went blank for a second there. So tell me about the sort of like self-editing or self-policing in your community. It sounds to me like the groups or the websites really foster some sort of community so people get a sense of that this is a real family, a real person in a real place. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I've likened it, and I mean this in the best way possible, to a dating site. So but instead you're getting attracted to a property that you're seeing. The idea is that you're getting to know each other before you reach that point of agreeing to any sort of exchange. And you're sharing a lot of details around, here's the closest airport, here's the typical flight prices. Sometimes it's more transactional, but very often it's more relational.
Right.
We've done exchanges too, where we've done the same individuals more than once, because that relationship has formed and you go back to that relationship. But yeah, it's a very, because it is about trusting others in your space, but it's also very common. When I started out, I didn't know or realize that this was happening back when people had catalogs that were sent out, and they would write to each other and get to know each other via snail and eventually work themselves to an exchange. So it's that idea of it's a sharing economy. I'm sharing what I have, you can use that, and then I'll use yours. That's been around, right, for forever. So folks buying into that are usually the ones that are maybe doing that in other areas too of their lives.
And do you often think of, when we used to couch surf, I would always bring a gift. Like that, to me, that was super important. If somebody was hosting us, I would bring a gift, just to share appreciation. Is there that kind of exchange as well?
Absolutely. And I would say that's really about that cultural piece.
Yeah.
So, whether or not you're going to South Dakota, they probably have a different local favorite snack than they would in Las Vegas or Oregon. And so usually when you arrive, there's a basket or something is set out. There's also this idea that for sure there's coffee in the house, right? After travel, there's often a loaf of bread, milk at minimum. But because it's someone's space, our home guide opens with the line, everything is at your disposal. Anything you want to eat, use, where. People have different levels of that, I'm sure, but it is very much about that welcoming. Now, a difficult thing for us, and it really gets to me, is oftentimes we're doing back to back. We're away for a period and people are coming in and out of our property. That's a little more difficult to, I mean, you can try to arrange someone to drop off the bottle of wine that you want to leave or something like that, but it's not always possible. But I find people are still very gracious about it either way. And I do think it's more when someone's coming into your home, there tends to be more of the goodie bag versus when you arrive to someone's place.
Got it, got it, got it. And what about homes or families that have pets?
Very, very common, and it's a great way. So this is where we cross over. So home exchanging crosses over very obviously for me with world schooling.
Yeah.
Over with all the pet sitting or house sitting, folks that are in those communities. There's a cat roaming around behind me that thinks he owns the property. And, cats can be easier, but very, very often there are pets, and it's usually hey, if this is a problem for any reason, we could probably find a situation, to board or take our pet to a friend. But if it's something you'd enjoy, and for world schooling and for world schoolers, I don't know about you with Miro, but always my kids, I can't have a pet, right? Because so very, very often we've been able to say, well, this next month we're going to Blink and they have a dog and a cat or whatever it is, a turtle. We've taken care of all sorts, but it's not usually an expectation as much as just, this is an option. And then from the allergy side of things, it's always put out there. So it's very clear that there are animals in places so that if anyone has any sort of allergy. But it's a nice way to be able to travel and still have your pet and know that it's being cared for. And we didn't see our cats for 4.5 months. We just got back and they look as good as ever.
Were they mad?
They seemed a little bit more dismissive.
I mean, that's cats. I traveled.
Yeah,
I traveled. Yeah. I traveled for 13 years. And when I settled here in Mexico, which is, I mean, I'm settling, but it's nice to have a garden. I kind of went overboard. I have 3 dogs.
Oh, of course. Of course. That's very, very, very common. All of the expats here have 3 to 5. We're just holding out because we do more of the coming and going from our space.
Yeah. Yep. Makes sense. Yeah, I mean, because I think about, could I house swap? What a great house. I have 3 hairy monsters.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I mean, dogs are friendly by their nature. So, and people who have dogs are happy typically to love on another person's pet.
Very much so. Okay, so I was wondering, and after I ask this question, I'm going to ask anybody who's watching who has questions, put them into the chat, and hopefully Katie has time to answer them afterwards. But Katie, tell us some house swapping stories. You've house swapped over 100 times. I want to hear where you've gone. I want to hear some of the amazing things that you were able to see through the local eyes. I want to hear some of the big aha moments and some of the surprises that you've encountered.
So, I mean, we always ask the kids what their favorite swap experiences are. And oftentimes it is around some sort of experience they had outside of the home as well.
Yeah.
But some memorable for me, Antigua, Guatemala. So a lot of our favorite swaps have ended up being some of our favorite places to go in the world. Antigua, Guatemala, and the type of housing there where it won't even, there's a door and it doesn't look like much is happening, but you open up that door and there's a courtyard and then there's this whole lovely property or again, we have stayed in every type of space and it's all felt lovely because it's in an international site or even national when we're in the States. It's in a site that we want to explore in some fashion. Trying to think Asia definitely stands out to us because that is oftentimes a very different experience in terms of being in a home in somewhere in the Asian culture. And we've had a number of swaps in Taiwan and Korea. It's not as common. You do look a little bit harder Japan, same thing, because culturally it's not as common. So when you are able to exchange there, I found that it's truly is a cultural experience from your host wanting to welcome you in in a whole different way. But then also just the nuances of being in a space where in some countries we leave our shoes on every time we enter a space. Other countries we don't, and knowing what that's like. We just did Croatia, and many times we wouldn't have thought to go to the place, particularly the town. So I went to a spot on the Croatian coast that would never have been on my radar, but because of home swapping, it alerts you to that. And you're looking and you're going, well, why not? And again, these people are living there and enjoying it. Let's go see what that's like. And then it's, mind blowing.
I love that. So you have house swap in all over the world. So in Europe, have you house swapped in Africa?
No, it's one place that we have not is in Africa. I know that there are swaps available there for sure. The community, the two that we're a part of specifically, upwards of 60,000 listings. So there's typically something everywhere. But then it's just a matter of, do you have a sort of reciprocity with, do they want to come to wherever you are?
Makes sense.
Open. Yeah.
And can you share the names of the communities? Do you feel comfortable doing that? Yeah.
So I'll just give the really brief background in terms of why we got into it. We watched the movie The Holiday, and that's honestly what a lot of people say. So we were one of those, but
I was thinking of that.
And I don't know why we thought that it wasn't actually a concept. We thought it was just put out there for the movie. So we right away said about, we should start a home exchange community and a website and so on and so forth. And then there was at least 6 out there, already. And I would say there's probably, and I don't quote me, but I would say there's between 6 to 10 communities. And I think one of the biggest that we're a part of is homeexchange.com. So the word home and the word exchange written out.com. Started a man, again, don't quote me, I don't want to get the story wrong, but from my understanding, one man band, a gentleman in his garage, and then eventually sold it to a French company who's added in some of the pieces that people question about, like, how do you feel safe? And is there any sort of guarantee? What if someone cancels on me? Those sorts of things. They turned it into a little bit more of a business in that sense. It's still the same spirit. But then because that one shifted a bit, and we've been hearing about another new upstart, again, just a gentleman, Drew, I don't know if I'll say his last name correctly, Sedum, but shout out to him in Australia. He started up just homegrown out of his house, started a website, did all the background, eventually was able to leave his job and really devote his time to that community. That one's called People Like Us.
Nice.
Yeah, and then if World Schoolers don't know about, there is a World School Home Swap Sit Facebook group where you definitely see and I would say those are more grassroots, just saying, hey, would anyone want to go here? And whether or not folks are actually on the site or the same site remains to be seen. We've always exchanged through the sites. There's just been so many opportunities through the sites.
And do people then leave reviews like they do on, say, like couch surfing, that sort of thing?
Say back up just a little bit and say the middle question.
It looks like you froze. Do people on these in these groups leave reviews? So it's like self moderating or self-policing sort of community?
Absolutely. There's a review process, and I think it's pretty robust. But I will also say it's not the few times we've ever used Airbnb, I felt pressured to leave a review. I felt hounded in a way, and it's a little bit different than that. And so you definitely see a mix. You can see every time there's been an exchange, and you can see whether or not the person left feedback or not. And it seems to always be a mix, 50-50 that people are leaving feedback and 50 that they're not. But the feedback is so helpful to me. I mean, I like to read reviews with everything, Amazon and so forth, but it's just infinitely helpful to me to read how another person's experience. And I'm looking for, did you have kids roughly the same age? Because I'm looking for that world schooling mindset. And what did you do while you were there? I often get ideas of what to do in an area when I read the reviews for a listing.
And would you consider staying at a place where they didn't have children, but they did have guest rooms and there was enough space and so forth?
We've done it many, many, many times. And I mean, we've stayed in places with, and I don't want to imply this. I'll want to end with this if I don't get to it, which is that there is no set. You don't have to have a beautiful, pristine home with fine art and, something displaying any amount of wealth. That is absolutely not. But certainly we've stayed in places with statues, and I have had children. It's not quite as relaxing, but it is. I find this, as long as people have grandchildren or nieces or nephews, they're open, because you can put in your listing that you want to limit children, and that's understandable. But I tend to only see that when I can tell that the space is smaller. And in that case, sometimes if it's just me or just my husband, then I'll, oh great, they don't allow children, but this is going to be a good spot for just us as single to go in and use.
I see. Okay. And then if you had any advice for world schoolers who are starting out, what would that be?
I have to say, and I don't want to beleaguer this point in any way, but cost wise, if we weren't home exchanging, I mean, I've run the numbers. I'm pretty into it all. If I would, it even makes sense to me to get a place in a low cost of living area in the world, to then be able to swap and exchange so that you are saving that lodging cost. And I've run some of our numbers, but the amount of money that we have saved and the flexibility it's given us with travel and the space to spread out as a family of 4, it's been just absolutely invaluable. And so it's like, if you're not doing it, for me, it's just walk through that with yourself and have a conversation with yourself as if there's any way that you could factor that into your world schooling experience. Because to me, it makes it so much more accessible. We absolutely could not and would not pay for lodging everywhere that we've been able to go.
And I love that it's an option for families who don't believe that they can travel because they have a home and the accountability and the responsibility and upkeep and so forth. But you took it an extra step, didn't you? You have a home, your primary home that you rented, then a secondary home, which, I mean, just buying a home in Dominican Republic and immersing yourself in another country, that's world schooling too. So you took it to a whole new level.
Yeah, for us, there's a school here where our kids skip off to each day where they're in an extreme minority. And so for us, it's being able to be in this culture that's so different as a place, and then to still go out and experience the new, because we've actually even reached a point where we've done the tourist type of things in most locations, or many locations, and we're now looking for that experience that allows us to immerse a bit more, language, community, maybe get involved in a project of some sort. And we're more leaning towards those longer term exchanges now as well.
I love that. So, Katie, how often do you exchange on average per year? Oh no. There you go.
Were you saying how often do
you exchange, home swap on average per year?
Probably averaging 10 to, well, let's do the math with our 9 years of exchanging. Yeah. So an average of 10 plus a year.
Wow. That's incredible.
It doesn't feel, it's smooth, right? Because again, we're not going in and out of, we're not packing our bag and not able to really immerse into a space and get comfortable. I don't know that we could travel at that level if we didn't have a local home to make ours the period of time we're there.
And how do you make a decision as a family where you're going?
Great question. We do check in with each other. There's been years, or at least parts of years, where we've said, let's just take the next request that comes our way. Let's just roll those dice, not be intentional about it. Very often, we also are basing our travel around maybe meeting up with. We have met so many wonderful world schoolers, starting from the conference we did with you 3 or 4 years ago. And we've stayed in touch with so many families. And so often it's to meet up with folks. And that's a great thing too, because there's, let's say we're going to go to a city, there's going to be hundreds of exchanges in that city. So you could be exchanging nearby to another family of world schoolers.
I love that. So where are you off to next?
So I'm headed to Madrid on Friday.
Oh my God. This is amazing.
Yep. So we'll do a home exchange there. Then we will do some travel to South America, either Peru or Ecuador in the spring. Next summer, we've got, yes. Next summer, we're going back to Colombia because we loved Medellin. And I'm telling you, of all, when
Katie, oh my God. I hope we didn't lose you. Let's see. Yeah, no, it looks like she's totally frozen. We'll give it a moment, folks, and see if she comes back. Are you there?
I am, yes.
Okay. All I heard was, wait a minute. Go ahead and repeat what you just said.
Sure. So we've got Madrid, either Ecuador, Peru, then Colombia, and then we have Greece and Italy and England again next time. We have family. My husband's British, so we home exchange right near where his family are at least once a year, and then we can have everybody in our space. It's great. It's been really nice.
That's amazing. And you were saying something about Colombia when you just froze?
Just the warmth of the warm they were in response, and there was abundant exchanges in Colombia. And these aren't expats. It can be, but that's not this is a local population that is very open. I think it says something about the culture, and you learn that. Obviously, then my experience is that the Colombian culture is that sort of come on in.
Yeah,
space is yours.
That's how we experience Colombia too. And you're right, there's a massive couch surfing population in Medellin also. So yeah.
It's fantastic. So we're going to go back this year.
Well, you are invited to come here anytime. So if you want to come to the Pink Walls, you're welcome. So just message me.
Absolutely.
Awesome. I don't see any questions. Let me just take a quick look. We're good. But if you're watching this in replay, put #replay so Katie is notified and she'll pop in and answer your questions. And would you put some of the resources into the thread, into the comments, so people have that?
Happy to.
Thank you so much, Katie. I am so happy to have connected with you again.
For bearing with my connection.
It's totally okay. We'll see you around the group and enjoy all of your travels.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.